Alright everybody, welcome back. So the update didn't just bring new jets, it also of course brings a brand new missile in the form of the AIM-120C-5. There were a ton of people that are actually more excited for this missile than they were for any of the planes because, I mean, to be quite fair, when it comes to top tier additions this update, there wasn't really that much. You got the F2, you have the F-18C MLU, and a copy and paste one for the Swiss. Well, unfortunately, I'm here to tell you today that, to be quite honest, you're better off running the AIM-120B in like 95% of scenarios. So to start off with, I just want to preface everything I am saying is about the AIM-120C-5 in War Thunder, not the AIM-120C-5 in real life. I don't want to see a bunch of people in the comments, telling me about the, improved ECCM or anything else of the AIM-120C-5, because that is not modeled in War Thunder. There are also people trying to bug report its turn performance, which is probably wrong, but unfortunately as of now there is nothing solid, and so I'm going to go on the assumption that this is not going to change. So going from the AIM-120A and B to the AIM-120C, there is one very major change you can see right off the bat, and that is actually in the fins. The AIM-120Cs have clipped fins, which of course were designed to allow it to fit in the weapons bay of the F-22, but it also lowers the drag. Unfortunately, at least in War Thunder, it does also come with a downside, which we'll get onto later. The motor is another very major switch going from the AIM-120A to the AIM-120C-5. The AIM-120A uses what's called a boost sustain motor, where it has a boost stage which has higher thrust for a short amount of time, and then the sustainer with a lesser amount of thrust for a longer period of time. The C5, on the other hand, just has a single long boost. This puts out thrust in between the booster and sustainer of the 120A, but honestly is closer to the sustainer. Combine that with the longer burn time that it has, 7.75 seconds over the 7 seconds of the 120A, and taking a look at the missile chart, you can see we do actually have a slight increase in delta V, or change in velocity, over the AMRAAM-A. But it comes at a pretty major cost in the form of acceleration. The AIM-120A accelerates a bit over 150 meters a second off the rail. That drops to only 96 on the AIM-120C-5. This means that the AMRAAM-A, inside of 20 kilometers, is actually faster to the target. You can see here that despite being launched after the AMRAAM-C, it overtakes it and maintains that position for quite some time. And remember, the less time your target has to react, the less time they have to notch. And while yes, the AIM-120C-5 is better past 20 kilometers, as you can see, it's not that much better. Essentially, every long-range shot that you hit with the AMRAAM-C-5, you almost certainly would have hit with the AIM-120A as well. Another thing is that on the dev server, the AMRAAM-C-5 did actually have a better seeker than the AMRAAM-A. Well, as you can see on screen right now, the seekers are identical in-game at the moment. It'll be exactly as easy to notch and chaff this missile as it would an AMRAAM-A, and actually it'll be easier because it'll take longer to get there, which gives the target more time to, notice the missile and react. One of the very important abilities for a top-tier active radar homing missile isn't actually the range, it's its high-off bore sight capability. After the initial, missile slinging engagement, you're going to start getting closer and closer to the enemy, and it turns into HMD radar slinging at close range, like, under 10 kilometers most of the time. If you're being pressured by an enemy, being able to get your nose somewhat near the target, fire off a missile, even if you're not really pointing at them, and immediately snap back into the notch to dodge their missile is incredibly important. It's why the Rafale is such an incredibly strong plane, or at least part of it. The AMRAAM is not good at this. That is one of its weak points, is that it can't really pull that well, and the AIM-120C-5 makes that even worse. From what I've read online, this shouldn't actually be the case, but remember, I'm talking about how the missile currently performs in War Thunder. And remember those smaller fins that I mentioned earlier? Well, in War Thunder at least, the combination of those smaller fins and the fact that it does actually weigh more than the A means that you get a missile that just substantially turns worse. Once again, I've tested it side by side for y'all, and keep an eye on the missile on the right wing. That is the AMRAAM-A, and you can actually see just how much harder it turns compared to the AMRAAM-C-5. I did it on the left wing as well, just to make sure it wasn't a case of where the missile was placed, and you can still see it turns much tighter. And again, it's the only one that actually manages to hit the plane. Taking a look from above in the sensor view, you can see that the AMRAAM-A just cuts immediately inside the other two missiles. I have a feeling the motor probably plays a role in this as well. So just to recap, we have a missile that has worse acceleration off the rail, which has worse time to target within 20 kilometers, which has the exact same notch and chaff resistance as the AIM-120A, which is also less agile and less capable of actually hitting a high off-bore sight target. And why is this all important? Well, this BVR gameplay you see me doing in the background, where I'm sitting up at 10 kilometers and shooting off AIM-120C-5s from 30-ish, this is not meta gameplay. To be quite frank, if somebody dies to one of these long-range shots, it's because they either overcommitted or they're just completely AFK. These 30 to 50 kilometer shots, while they are funny and they will get you kills every once in a while, are incredibly unreliable. And again, any actually like sentient player, all they have to do is do what I'm doing right here. Just go into the notch, press the chaff button a couple times while wiggling up and down, and boom, the missile is gone. And at the ranges these are at, what I just did is cherry picking. It is incredibly unlikely that's going to happen. Most of my games, I could fire 3 or 4 AIM-120C-5s at the beginning of the match, just like I've been doing right here, and maybe 1 or 2 will connect if I'm lucky. Some games, none connect at all. And again, even that only really happens at the beginning of the match. Once the match actually develops, as long as you're actively playing and you're not just, running around at incredibly high altitude, doing circles at the back of the map, you will wind up in those below 20 kilometer settings. You will wind up needing to take some high off-bore sight shots. And those close range ones are the ones that are actually the most likely to connect. Honestly, most of the time, if you launch it from more than just like a little bit over when the missile itself can lock on, it's probably not going to connect if the enemy player has hands at all. So the issue with the AIM-120C-5 is you're essentially trading the aspects of the missile that are actually important in today's meta, your acceleration and your turn, for long-range performance, which, again, is not meta and won't get you all that many kills. So again, you're better off just running the AIM-120A because, to put it simply, it just fits AirRB. Now, if you still really want to use it, I could see a small edge case and, say, for example, on the F-15, maybe you want to bring, 2 AIM-120C-5s for the beginning joust at the beginning of the match. Throw them at long range early, maybe pick up a free kill on an F-15E that's just flying in straight towards the battlefield. I could see that. And then you still have the AIM-120As for whenever the furball develops later on. For now, though, nothing has changed, and the Rafale is still going to be slamming. In any case, though, I hope you enjoyed the video. I know it's not a vehicle, like I said I was going to do next, but I just really felt like I had to make this because I saw a lot of misinformation going out about this missile. A lot of people freaking out and acting like it's a super missile when really it's a side grade at best. And honestly, it's just kind of worse at the moment. I am probably going to do a vehicle next, though. I was thinking maybe the Finnish Hornet, unless somebody else beats me to the punch. But I hope y'all have a great day, and I'll catch y'all next time. So, peace, y'all.